Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
So it's been said it is harder to raise capital these days. And my friend Marcin Drozdz has just said, no, it's not. It's basically, you just have to have systems and processes in place. And so the amazing thing is if something is hard, it's important to find someone who's doing it and doing it well. And I think Marcin and his group is doing it very well. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. They've worked with my friend Ken McElroy, who was did the forward to my book. He's a good friend of mine. And, basically there are ways to do things that you don't know how to do. If you haven't raised capital, if that sounds crazy, if you've raised a little bit of money, you don't know how to scale, this is a great episode for you. And again, that was a big challenge I had of, okay, I've raised $100,000. How do I scale up? We're going to talk about that. And he gives a lot of practical things. So let's jump in. Marcin Drozdz, let's go for it. All right, Marcin, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. How you doing, brother?
Excellent. Good to see you, sir.
We were talking. I know you're up in Canada. You are hopefully surviving. You get free cryotherapy there, and you said you may break one of these days and become a U.S. resident, right?
Every winter it gets closer and closer. Yes.
I know some people that live up north, and it's like every winter they just go. They like snowbird. They just come down. They're like, yeah, we're still living here, but we're coming down and doing it. So I wanted to talk a little about, we connected. I know I've seen your stuff. If anybody watching hasn't seen Marcin, he's just really big space in raising capital, has raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and has worked with Ken McElroy, a good buddy of mine, a good buddy of both of ours. And you have a process, you have a system about raising capital. And I really thought this would be interesting for passive investors to learn, as well as people that are interested in raising capital or already raising capital. And even if you're a passive investor, it's really interesting to learn what good capital raisers do and how that actually works. Or if you're on the operations side, what does that look like? Because I used to think the line was very clear between active and passive, but I find, this person's high net worth, and all of a sudden they start raising a bunch of money from their friends. And so for some of us, that could be something that you could start to do, just being able to tap into that. So this is kind of to do a little deep dive into that and just kind of learn about what it's about. But let's hear a little bit about your story, how you got started in this, what your background is, and how you got that amazing beard. It's definitely been growing that a while. Look good there. So.
You know what? My daughter last year for Christmas figured out it was me because she pulled the beard down. This year I'm hoping to fool her. So we're gonna dye this white here in a few days here.
Oh.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. As you mentioned, I've been in the space for about 20 years now. It's all I've ever done, private equity capital raising. And I had the good fortune back in 07, 08 to work with a firm where our client partner was Ken McElroy with MC Companies. So literally, I went from single family and reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and the ABCs of real estate investing 20 plus years ago to, hey, so this Ken McElroy guy, him and his partner Ross, they're buying all these buildings. So when Ken talks about how he went up to Canada to raise capital, this was Canada. We were part of that equation. So we ended up raising a ton of money for Ken, and it was a fantastic opportunity to learn from obviously the best in the business in the context of underwriting, good practices, culture, all that stuff. And did that for a few years, raised a whole bunch of money, then broke out on my own, did a bunch of, we did development, we did acquisitions of businesses, we funded buyout, all kinds of different things, real estate, not real estate based. Multiple nine figures raised, retail, institutional. And what I found, Bronson, we were talking about this at Limitless actually, is that the thing 20 years in the business that like the one truth that I've learned in this business, but to summarize it to like one simple truth, is that the biggest lie in real estate that's ever told, in my opinion, is if you have the deal, the money will come.
Yeah. Right.
And the reason why I say that is because, look, you might make a wholesale fee or an assignment fee on it, but the truth is, if you don't have the money, you're not doing anything. Okay?
Yeah.
That deal will get done, but it's not going to be on your balance sheet. So what I mean to say is literally what I've spent the last 15 years of my life doing is figuring out how to raise the money legally before I have the deal.
Yeah.
So I ended up creating a bunch of frameworks around that. And literally, prime example, we acquired a 144 unit in Houston not too long ago, where we shaved $5 million off a $16 million purchase because we had the money before we made the offer. So, I want to walk through some of those frameworks with you guys.
Yeah. I'd love to know. I really look forward to talking about it. I think that for people that have, it's interesting, there's kind of two audiences. Some are capital raisers. They know it's gotten more challenging to raise capital than it was a few years ago. I actually ran into a friend who's a big name syndicator in the space. We've done some deals together. And he was at one point way bigger than me. And he said he felt that raising capital right now for multifamily apartments was down 90% from where it was a while ago. Now, I think that depends who you are, depends how you're doing it, depends, and of course, if you have systems and processes and strategies. But I'm very much of the opinion you start raising the money right away before you get to the deal, because you want to, at the very least, you want to at least have a list of investors you've teed up that's ready to go. But it sounds like you're saying you could potentially actually get people cash in hand before you actually make the offer. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So for context, Bronson, when I started working in this space in 07, 08, you remember what happened back then, right?
Yeah, it's hard to forget.
So you want to talk about bad times to raise capital? I started in arguably the worst time prior to after the SNL raising capital. And in those first 2 years, I think I did 20 or 25 million in capital raising. So I really don't buy the argument that it's harder to raise capital today. I do buy that it was super easy for the last 10 years and people were spoiled, where they thought capital raising was making a post on Instagram or Facebook and 300 people would pour into your inbox with like, take my money. That's not normal. So the last 5 or 7 years, we're not normal. Like, again, when I started in this business from 07, 08, that was normal for me. So today, I just think it's business as usual. And to kind of get to the point is that when the wind isn't at your back anymore, you literally have to change your direction. And all those bad habits that people had over the last couple of years, that stuff, it's just, that's why guys are going back to doing what they did before in tech or IT or, brokering or whatever it is. They're no longer syndicators or no longer fund managers. They're back to what they were because they didn't actually have the skill. So here's a really simple framework for anybody who's a syndicator, anybody who's looking at a deal. I call it the EASY method. And EASY stands for exclusive, abundant, scarce in your allocation. So E, exclusive, is tell me 3 to 5 things about your opportunity or your investment thesis that whether I'm an investment banker or a plumber, I just get it. So for example, we bought this building or we buy buildings for half of what they cost to build. Okay, 50% below replacement cost, right? We buy buildings that are typically 20 to 40% under rent. We buy buildings in markets that are, X, Y, Z. Like you have to be able to, within 3 or 4 sentences, tell me at a very high level the thesis of what you're doing. And better still, if you're like, just like this building, just like this building. So being able to tell me 3 or 4 things that are exclusive, that aren't technical, don't talk to me about cap rate compression or expansion, or people don't know what this means. Or IRR. Most passive investors, if you really push them and ask them what IRR is, they have no idea. So, you have to be able to talk about things that are simple to understand, but exclusive. Again, whether you're a plumber, investment banker, you understand. So once you have that, you have to be able to then demonstrate abundance. So abundance shows that you have options. So in other words, when Bronson is out there raising money, your clients know that you have hundreds of clients, you speak in front of thousands of people, and you have podcasts, you have a lot of options. Well, how do you demonstrate that to somebody in a way where they understand that they're fortunate to have an opportunity to look at this deal with you? So as an example, Bronson, when we were at Limitless, you had your book signing, you had all this thing, you're in front of a couple hundred people. Literally before that event, you could have been like, hey, Jim, it's good to get you on this call. Listen, this building, X, Y, Z, here's why it's exclusive. And I'm glad we're talking about this today because actually next week I'm at this conference and I'm going to be in front of a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Right. So you're demonstrating abundance. Like you're not, this deal is happening with or without you.
Yeah. The best time to raise is when you don't need the money, right? Or at least you have, and that's for newer capital raises. I find it's a big deal is they're just so desperate. I just take any money that's there, but you have to kind of have this it's here and we're going to fill it up. But if you want to get in, let me know soon. You have to kind of be a little bit detached from the result and just be and it's funny, that's how we respond to things, right? That there's an abundance there. I don't need your money. But, if you want to come in, here's what it is. And you've got a certain amount of time and, when it's done, it's done.
As soon as you put a red velvet rope in front of something, it's valuable, right? And then it has, whether it's a Louis Vuitton bag or a Ferrari or getting a reservation at a restaurant, and that brings me to my next point, which is S for scarcity. So think about, there's 2 ways to create scarcity in our business. And I mean legitimate, genuine scarcity, not like flash in the pan, rah bullshit. I mean legitimate scarcity, right? So there's 2 ways. One is time. So in other words, if you're doing a syndication or you're revaluing your fund or there's some kind of a trigger activity happening, That's a truth that is happening at X time. The other form of scarcity is allocation. So in other words, are you raising $1 million? Are you raising a $10 million? And then you break that down one step further to what your average investor is. So literally you could say something like, okay, Bronson, so, just for context, our average client in this deal has been about 150,000. And my challenge is I'm only looking for another $1 million to close out this round, this building, this whatever it is. So really we only have room for another 6 or 7 investors. So I've demonstrated scarcity, and I've also given you context over how, as opposed to getting on the phone with somebody and saying something like, oh yeah, we need another $1 million, or we need another $10 million. Like when we were doing stuff for Kenny 20 years ago, so Kenny would be doing, a $10 or $20 million raise on an acquisition that Ken had going on. And there was a few of us raising money. So at least I didn't get on the phone and say, we need $20 million. I would say, hey, my allocation is $2 million. And I still have another 12 people I need to call. See, that creates legitimate, genuine scarcity. I'm not lying. I'm laying out the facts in a way where you understand that basically this is going to happen regardless. So do you want to come?
Yeah, that's huge. Oh, that's awesome. So that's EAS. Was there another?
So yeah, you got it. Y is for your allocation. So
Easy.
again, by the way, this it's easy. There you go. So this so you get on the, and again, this framework works for your marketing. It works for your copy. Obviously, work with your lawyers, make sure everything's legal. But and it also works on a phone call. So as an example, Brad, so we're on a call, and I walk you through what's exclusive. You're interested. I demonstrate abundance and scarcity, and then I say, so you're probably gonna have some questions for me and ask me a bunch of things. And I'm gonna say, okay, look, so obviously you're gonna have more questions. So why don't we do this? I'm gonna send you the full data room. You can have a look at it and work your way through it. Now, look, if everything did check out in that data room and was exactly the way you thought it was, is there an amount that you would consider for this deal? And then
I'd say $1 million. Yeah.
I'd say perfect. So, but in all seriousness, most people would, it's almost like a trial balloon, right? If they're serious, they'd say, they're always going to preface it with like, yeah, look, if it is what I think it is, or if it looks the way I want it to be, whatever, I'd probably do X. I'd probably look at doing 100K. Okay, so why don't we do this? Like I said, I've got about $1 million left for this deal. Why don't I set the 100 aside for you? Today's Thursday. We'll hop on a call here on Monday. In the meantime, I'll send you everything. And to make sure that allocation is still there for you, because like I said, I'm getting on a plane, I'm making these calls, I've got these other people to get back to. And if someone's like, yeah, sounds good, 9 times out of 10 in my experience, as long as you haven't oversold the deal and you've got a good data room, you're going to get that commitment.
Yeah.
So that's your allocation. So again, exclusive, abundant, scarce in your allocation. It's a really good framework, and even more power to you guys when you can get to a point where you no longer have to lean on a syndication and you can learn how to sell a fund as an opportunity for the purposes of being able to go out and do better deals.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, the whole thing too, I mean, these are great points, being exclusive. And I think abundance and scarcity kind of go hand in hand, right? We don't need the money, but we have a limited amount, like it's kind of goes hand in hand. And then the allocation, that's all very valuable. And I think, again, one thing I wish I had known earlier is that, if you control the money, you can do whatever you want. I mean, you can you set the tone for the deal. So as a syndicator, if you can raise $1 million, that's very different than if you could raise 5 million or 10 million, or you have more that you can raise. And that's where really building that funnel and really putting it together of how are you going to bring people in here. And a guy I worked with when I first started, he was just really great at drawing leads in, and he'd just do it by creating lead magnets and speaking on things and paid ads. And he's had this whole engine, and it worked for him. It really worked well. But I know for you, one thing I was really impressed with you, I wanted to kind of chat about this a little bit, is that you're really good, Marcin, at the data, getting behind, okay, I've got this many calls, and as part of your system as well, this many calls, this many investors, this is the conversion rate, this is the average investment size. I can tell how much I'm going to raise based on all these factors. And one of the things I think I was sharing on before this call is that sometimes it's difficult to know how much we're going to raise for you. Sometimes we'll raise, 500, 750, right now, or we'll raise, $3 million. So it's kind of, there's a variance. And it's just changed. I don't know if it's, like you said, it's harder, but it's changed. It's changed a little bit, and you've got to continually have you got to reinvent yourself to continually. And like you said, it's not what it was a few years ago, or just, hey, you're here and let me throw my money at you. And hey, there's no space, it's a very different thing than it was. So can you talk a little bit about the metrics that you use and kind of how you teach your students to to really look at how much you can raise and how do you grow that number and changing one little variable. I saw how you change this little variable here and this changes
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. So I subscribe to the theory of constraints as it pertains to business. And when you look at capital raising as a business, which is really what it is, you then start to look at the money as sort of the widget or the commodity, the thing that sort of passes through the system, so to speak. Like if you are manufacturing hot tubs or if you're manufacturing houses or whatever it is, you have your inputs and you have your throughputs to get the product, right? So if your goal is to get the capital, to raise the capital, there's certain stages you're going to go through. So I broke it down to 6 stages, and each one of these is in my opinion, the highest leverage point you're going to potentially get in your capital raise. So at the top of the funnel, let's call it a funnel, you have number of contacts. So this is as simple as how big of a network do you have to communicate with? Now, for you, it might be email marketing. For other people, it might be social media. For some people, it's direct outreach, texting, whatever it is that you're doing. But it's the number of people that you can actually reach out to on a consistent basis. It can't just be like, oh, I have 3,000 LinkedIn contacts. Like legitimate people that you have actual direct connection with, right? That's step 1. Step 2 is percentage of those people that are qualified. So how do you define who's qualified? Well, it depends on if you're doing a Reg B, Reg C, 506B, 506C. But generally speaking, if most people are dealing with only accredited investors, you're going to probably have a fixed number of 20%. Now, if your database, if you audit your database and 20% of people aren't qualified, then that's another constraint that we can address. But again, you have number of people, qualified percentage of people. And then the third one is booked meeting percentage. So what percentage of those people that are qualified will book a meeting with you? That's the third one. The fourth one is the show rate. So, Bronson, this isn't a surprise for you, but not everybody that's going to book a meeting is going to show up to the meeting, right? So
that's right. Yeah.
So what's your show rate, right? And if you're not tracking it, then, that's another conversation. That's another constraint. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is the closing percentage. So what percentage of the people that are going to show are going to commit? And then the sixth variable is the average commitment size. So when you walk through each one of these 6 variables, what ends up happening is you get very clear on where your constraints are. Because the old saying is, if you ask a marketing person what's wrong with the business, they're going to tell you, oh, you need more ads, you need more leads. If you ask a salesperson, they're going to tell you, well, we just need to close more people, right? And if you ask an ops person, they'll tell you the whole freaking thing is broken, right? So it's just, everybody has their own lens, but by objectively looking at those 6 stages of what's happening in your funnel, you will actually know where your best bang for your buck is. So I'll give you a prime example. I have one client that they were closing at 35%, just a monster, almost 40%. So literally
Amazing.
4 out of 10 people that they met with that were qualified, they wrote a check. And they thought that they needed to get their closing rate up to like 50%. And I'm just talking to the guy. I'm like, dude, like if we just doubled the amount of people you have at the top of your funnel, the number at the bottom was insane.
Yeah.
Because the amount of energy it would require to increase your closing rate by 10%, because he loves sales, great sales, loves the sale, right? So for him, that was the goal. And I'm like, yeah, that'll incrementally increase the bottom number. But if we can just help you get this, even hire somebody externally to help you get this, his numbers were like 3x.
That's incredible. Well, I think that you brought up a really good point too. I think this is something I know a lot of people do capital raising and it's like, less than $1 million or it's a small amount, but the idea of like, the question comes up like, how do I scale? How do I scale? And there comes a point where it makes sense to spend money to make money. And I know it seems really simple, but like a lot of people are stuck in a mindset that's like, oh, I've got to do everything myself and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. It's like, well, no, it makes sense to do ads. It makes sense to hire somebody to help you to do your investor calls. It makes sense to kind of help with some of these processes because you need to grow the funnel. You need to make it bigger so your message is actually out there. Otherwise, you're never really going to be able to get where you want to go. Have you found kind of that resistance or the kind of that mindset people come in and feel like they've got to do a lot on their own initially?
Yeah, I mean, people, everybody will defer to what they know works until they get fatigued, and then they're finally exhausted enough to try something else. So, so here's what we do with my business, with any of our funds, any of our clients that come in. The first thing we do with our clients is we identify your unfair advantage. Now, your unfair advantage will literally drive the bus on everything else. It's the biggest multiplier on everything else you do, whether it's ads, whether it's marketing, whether it's live events, speaking appearances, phone calls, reputation, all that stuff. Like your unfair advantage is literally the foundation of it all. Now, if you're unclear about what your unfair advantage is, it's literally the thing that if somebody's exposed to that first, when they show up to a meeting with you, it's not if they're going to invest, they're already mentally thinking when and how much.
Yeah.
And by being able to package your unfair advantage, whether it's through audio or video or through a book or a webinar or whatever it is, so that, and you know this, you're already 80 or 90% sold on working with a person, a brand, a team, before you even, get fully immersed in it. That last 10% is that validation that you're looking for. And my whole point is the more time you spend on getting super clear on your unfair advantage, especially nowadays with TikTok and these YouTube shorts where our attention span is like a goldfish. If you can't clearly communicate your unfair advantage in a way that's unique and curious to people in the first 3 to 10 seconds, then, you can be the best at something, but, people aren't going to stick around long enough to find out.
Yeah, it's so true. Just the clearer you can be. And that's what thing people don't realize. And I know you have a thought leadership platform, and that's why you're impacting. That's why we're doing shows like this and things. It's just, when you can create value in the space where people see what you're doing, you've got to get your message out there. You've got to be able to have something that you're sharing that's different, that differentiates you from everyone else. Otherwise, you're just noise. And I think that's people don't realize. I remember when I first started doing this, it felt very, very vulnerable to be like, I'm putting myself out there. I don't know. This feels uncomfortable. But then what I pretty quickly realized, well, if it's no good, nobody's going to see it anyway. So it's like, it's really kind of like freeing, like, oh, and then once you start actually raising capital or you start seeing it work, it's like, it actually is like, wow, this stuff actually works. Do you help on the deal side as well, where you kind of like encourage people to look at certain types of deals or certain types of things and certain types of profit, or is it more just about how much capital you raise? And I know there's certain structures that work better for some folks. I know that's probably the biggest constraint, is raising the capital, but also the deal structure as well, and kind of what that looks like.
Yeah. So Bronson, I'll share with you what one of my mentors told me when I first got into the training side of the business is give people what they need.
Yeah.
Then sell them, give people what they want, and then sell them what they need.
Yeah.
So in other words, everybody that comes to us or works with us in some capacity initially thinks that, oh, I just need money. Okay, cool. So yes, you need it. But when you start unpacking that, to your point, deal structure, legal structure, incentives, waterfalls. Yeah. So how do you take somebody who would comfortably invest 250 and bring them in at $1 million? How do you take somebody from $1 million to 5? How do you?
Yeah.
So all these different conversations. Yeah, you're 100% right. But again, the foundation. If you do nothing else right, if you get super clear on your personal unfair advantage, and more importantly, how that unfair advantage is relatable and applicable to someone a complete stranger on the other side of the country, that will get you further than anything else. Because literally, you can spend millions of dollars on advertising, but if your messaging is crap, like we see so many football ads, like at the Super Bowl, right, where they spend tens of millions of dollars on these ads, but the messaging is crap, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you have these other little rogue campaigns that spend almost nothing, but their messaging is so good that it actually goes viral and gets hundreds of millions of dollars in free press.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
No, that's it. And I love what you shared. I mean, we talked about it this way, is sell people what they want and give them what they need, right? So it's the idea of
100%.
like, I want this, but then what they actually really need is this other thing here too, how they structure it. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I just want to say,
you do the same thing with your clients, right? They come in with you and they initially think, hey, I just need to save some money on taxes. Hey, you know what? I just need this. I need this. And then you take the time, you figure out what their goals are, their priorities are. And yeah, that is something that they want, but it's really a symptom of like 7 other things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We've started this mastermind I was sharing with you before we started recording about called the Wealth Forum, where we've got a small handful of high net worth individuals, and, they're coming in, we're going to give networking and education and different things. But really, it's been surprising to me how much it's just the community of being a part of it, as well as the mindset. A lot of things around mindset and just kind of self-limitations. We've done a lot of stuff around there, but what really the selling point was like, hey, you're going to get access to these deals, you're going to get, and there is that, and you're going to get access to other people in that community, and it is there, but it's like the things that really, they maybe need something totally different. So it's really amazing how that can work. So Marcin, I know you have your program, you've got your coaching, you're raising, hundreds of millions of dollars, you're doing all this, you're working with folks. I want to really honor you for your what you're contributing in the space, and just every time I interact with you, it has been great. Even meeting your wife, who works in the business as well, and so it's been awesome. But I wanted to just really ask how, if people want to reach out to you, want to follow what you're doing, want to hear about your programs, how can people do that, or they want to invest with you? How can they do that?
Sure. Yeah. Just Google my name, marcindrozdz.com. That's probably the best place to go. You can spell that in the show notes because there's a few D's and a few Z's there. That's the best place there. For those of you who are active capital raisers, you could pick up my book, Unlimited Investor Leads. It's #1 bestseller on Amazon. How to Find People with Money. It's a really good resource. Or you can get it for free on my website. Just opt in, sure, for the newsletter. But if you want the physical, I like paper books, so that depends on what people want to do. That's a really good way. And then Bronson, one thing I'll add to your comment about masterminds and getting in the right rooms. So for context, I spend a lot of money on masterminds myself, and I do it not just for the fact that there's something tangible I want to get from the mastermind that I'm learning from, but I do it with the intention that I'm going to meet people at that mastermind that value themselves and their business at the same level that I value myself. And that, for me, at this stage with little kid and family and other goals, is there's only so many hours in the day. So I literally pay for speed. So, if you're running a mastermind, I mean, people in your community should definitely take you up on it, because I'll tell you right now, masterminding is the fastest way to really not just grow your net worth, but your network massively.
Absolutely. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I try to get at people that are 10x where I'm at in any area of life, and it helps grow me as well. So Marcin Drozdz, really appreciate you, brother. Excited for this episode, and thanks for being here with our audience today, brother.
You too. Thank you.
All right, so great episode with Marcin. I hope you got a lot out of this. I loved his formula. One of the takeaways for me was the easy formula: exclusive, having abundance, scarcity, which those two actually kind of go together, and also the Y was allocations. It spells the word easy, right? Even though Y does not, allocation doesn't start with a Y, but I guess if you can make an acronym, make it work, maybe you can do it. So allocation. Anyway, but one thing I loved is the link between abundance and scarcity. Abundance as a capital raiser is, I've got all the money I need. I talk to somebody, I don't need your money, their money. We're going to have enough. It's going to fill up, having the faith and confidence that it's going to do that. And also having the scarcity that, hey, we've only got this amount of time. We've only got this amount of allocation. It's going to go fast. And being able to speak confidently about that is really powerful. And so $45 million later, I've raised, I haven't raised as much as Marcin, but I also haven't been doing it as long. So it's something that we continue to learn and continue to develop ways to get more effective at getting your message out there. I love the Thought Leadership platform. If you haven't, started a podcast, if you haven't started finding a way to reach more people, maybe starting a local meetup, those are great ways to get started. Highly encourage you in that. If you're a passive investor, if you haven't joined our investment club, I hope that you do. Check it out, bronsonequity.com, hit the join button. We'll start a relationship with you, set a call up with you to learn about some of your goals. But thank you for taking the time to educate yourself. It really is inspirational to me. I'm very happy that you're here. Would love to connect with you and look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show. You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.